Another blizzard, another tornado threat, and more wind. Just your average 2025 American spring day. I'm going to show you who's going to be affected and when. Plus, we'll have today's trivia question, a word from George Washington, and our word of the day. So don't go anywhere. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Welcome into this busy weather day, folks. Jason Pritchard here with you. Happy that you are here with us today. This is Cold Rain's Weather World, where we talk about the current weather and the upcoming weather and have a few fun little segments along the way. Now, we've got a lot to talk about today. We've got hazards galore, and we're going to get into all of the details of our blizzard, the wind that's blowing around the plains, and the threat for tornadoes this afternoon. Just a quick programming note, the agenda is going to start with our trivia question, then we're going to get into our 2-minute drill where we really just look at the current weather and the weather over the next 3 days so that you can be prepared as you head on out into the rest of your work week. Then we're going to dive into our marquee event, which is the big storm that's ongoing today, bringing the blizzard conditions, thunder snow, and the tornado threat. So we're going to look at all of that here in just a minute. Then we're going to take a look at the long range and wrap up our show with that. I'll have all of this broken out in chapters, segments in the video, and I'll have this in the description as well. So you can skip right to the part that you want to get to, but come back later and watch the rest of the video because there's some other segments in here that you'll learn some things and have some fun along the way. Now, we're going to take a quick look at our trivia question and get right to that as we always do. So here is our trivia question for the day. What country holds the record for the most annual lightning strikes? The answer might surprise you. Is it A, Venezuela, B, the United States, C, India, or D, Australia? If you know the answer, type it in the comment section. If you don't know it, just wait till the end of the show and you will know it by the end of the show. So that is our trivia question of the day. So we're going to kick things off with our 2-minute drill, and we're going to start on our alerts page. And remember, this is an interactive map, and the link is in the description of this video for this map. But if you want to click on your county, you can see current conditions, current temperatures, and the forecast from the National Weather Service. And if you don't know your county, learn your county. That's very important. All right, so we've got blizzard conditions from Kansas all the way up into Minnesota with winter storm warnings in Wisconsin, the central portion of Wisconsin. Heavy wind-driven snow in these red areas here. I saw a report from Columbus, Nebraska with heavy snow and winds near 50 miles per hour. So very, very dangerous conditions existing right now in this band. Don't drive if you can avoid it. Very, very hazardous conditions there. Now, outside of that, you've got a big area of wind. It's really windy. We've got gusts, high wind warnings and wind advisories, gusts potentially around 60, 65 miles per hour in some of these areas here in the plains. Red flag warnings are up in much of Texas over into Missouri and portions of the mid-Mississippi River Valley, even up here into the mountains of West Virginia and portions of the Ohio Valley for strong winds, warm temperatures, and very dry conditions. So do not burn anything in these areas. Outside of that, that's pretty much where all the action is in the center part of the country. Looking at our satellite picture, you can see this comma head associated with this rapidly deepening storm very, very nicely. You've got a nice deformation band with heavy snow, and then in the warm sector, showers and thunderstorms are starting to break out. You'll see showers fire along this cold front later today, but it's a really nice satellite presentation. This thing's going to deepen down into the mid-8 not 8, but 980. So that's pretty strong for this latitude. We've gotten used to these 970s storm systems, so this seems like nothing, but it's still a very strong storm. And as you are, if you're experiencing the weather associated with this, you can attest to that. It's going to help spawn some severe weather over Illinois and Indiana later. Another system moving onto the west coast, going to bring some rain up here in the northwest, and another system moving off the east coast. Radar-wise, you can see that big band of heavy snow and showers and potentially some thunderstorms over here into Wisconsin and Illinois. That'll fire up later today. You kind of think your main threat in Illinois and Indiana is going to be from, say, noon to maybe 8 p.m. That's your window. You're probably going to see Thunderstorms develop later in the afternoon and into the evening, but just start to pay attention. It's going to be midday when this video gets released, so as soon as you see this, you need to be paying attention for what's going to happen in the afternoon here. Some wind and tornadoes are possible. Another system, as we saw earlier, kind of moving onto the west coast, bringing some showers, even some snow starting to break out in the higher elevations out here. Your temperature profile right now, you're looking at mostly 30s and some 20s, in the upper plains and the Rockies where it's snowing. You're in the right around 32, maybe a couple degrees shy of that. So it's kind of a heavy wet snow, not this really dry in the 20s snow. So, but either way, hazardous travel conditions. Don't drive if you don't have to. Warm air surging north out of the south ahead of that cold front, 50s and 60s, even getting up into New England. So this is going to set the stage in Illinois and Indiana for some severe weather later. And looking at our Atari maps, we can see the big storm system in the plains, heavy snow to the north today, severe weather, as we said, over Illinois and Indiana this afternoon, with general thunderstorms up and down the Tennessee Valley into the deep south. And then that'll shift east overnight into tomorrow. That storm will continue to push on the west coast, bringing areas of light precipitation into the Bitterroots over into Montana. And then if you get into the Cascades, you're going to see some heavier snow there, rain along the coast. That'll continue tomorrow. That pushes a little bit to the east. That other storm system that's out in the Midwest today, that's going to move up into the Great Lakes into Canada and include a little bit of an area of heavier rain than it looked like originally thought as the storm system slows down a little bit. So maybe, a quarter to half an inch of rain potentially up and down the east coast here, and then a secondary wave of low pressure may form out here off Cape Cod somewhere and sling a little bit of moisture back into the northeast. So you could have some rain potentially mixed with some snow at times up here as the temperatures drop. Little clipper moving into the Great Lakes. It's not going to be a big deal, just going to bring some precipitation here, and it'll be kind of a light in nature. And then this other system continues to work into the west with heavier snow now falling in the higher elevations. Looking at our snowfall total for this afternoon, another 6 to 10 inches of snow could fall on top of what's already falling or already fallen. So Fort Dodge, Sioux City down to Columbus, you guys could pick up another 6 to maybe 10 inches of snow depending on how the snow banding sets up this afternoon. So a nice little snow event for you all. Nice, I would call it a big snow event because I don't see snow in North Carolina hardly anymore. Temperatures this afternoon, 30s and 40s with 20s out in the west, with 20s in the higher elevations, 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s along the Gulf Coast. 60s and 70s surging all the way up into the Great Lakes. Tomorrow, a similar story along the East Coast where you're going to see 60s and some 70s down here to the southeast, little return flow in the plains, but otherwise cooler weather behind that system, 30s and 40s across much of the west into the Ohio Valley and Midwest. And then on Friday, chilly across the north, not too bad though. We're looking at, generally 40s and 50s from the upper plains through the Great Lakes, and a little bit cooler in the northeast where you've got precipitation and potentially some snow falling up here in the White and the Green Mountains potentially. And then a little warmer through the middle of the country, and then down here to the southwest, it starts to really warm back up again. We're getting into a milder regime. And that is your 2-minute drill. Now, stay tuned because we're going to do a deep dive into the storm system today. We're going to look at the severe threat more closely, I should say. And then but coming up next, we've got our word of the day. So you're not going to want to miss this. This is very important. It helps you understand what not to do while you're eating. So the word of the day is about table manners. And since we could all use good table manners, today's word is relevant. It is bibble. Now, that is not a book that you read in church. That's the Bible. It's also not a Barbie character. Well, actually, it is a Barbie character, but that's not the context of the word. So the word is bibble, and what does it mean? It means to eat or drink noisily. So don't be a bibbler. That's how you would use that in a sentence. And as a matter of fact, our friend George Washington has something to say about that. He has much to say about eating, and we'll read some of those as we go through additional shows. But rule number 97 will help you with bibbling. Here's what it says. Put not another bit into your mouth till the former be swallowed. Let not your morsels be too big. So George Washington is very wise and will help us to control our bibbling. All right, so let's take a look at the severe threat. That's one of the headlines. We looked at the blizzard a little bit, but the other headline event is the severe threat, and we're going to take a look at that right now. And so we can see the National Weather Service has upgraded the slight risk from yesterday to an enhanced risk over portions of central and east central Illinois and then into west central, just nosing in to Indiana here. Slight risk surrounds that, and a marginal risk surrounds that for just general thunderstorm activity with a potential for a few severe wind reports in some of these green areas. Slight risk, particularly as you get into Indiana, looks like it's going to be mostly a wind threat. The tornado risk tends to be in this enhanced area here where you have the potential to see the likelihood or a better likelihood of tornadoes and stronger tornadoes if they do form. There are some question marks about instability. Will the sun break out, heat up the atmosphere, and create a warmer environment? That would certainly aid in instability and increase the threat. There are some indications that that might not happen or might not happen to a large degree. Plus, there's still some model discrepancy on dew point and how in dew points in terms of how far north those rich dew points can get pulled. You don't need a lot of instability with the kind of shear that exists in the environment. There's good low-level turning, and there's good shear with height, and so wind speed changes with height, increasing with height. And so you've got good mechanisms upstairs to drive thunderstorms. The question is, will there be enough instability to really sustain those updrafts? And then you get the rotation and the stretching, and the tornado funnel comes to the ground. And so we're going to look at that. The storm system looks to track a little closer to these areas too, which has increased some of the turning in the lower levels of the atmosphere, hence the enhanced risk. So that's what we're looking at. The tornado threat is maximized in that enhanced area, and you see the 10%, that's 10% of tornadoes within 25 miles of a point, plus you've got this little hatched area for significant tornadoes, potentially 5% around that, 2% around that. The secondary wind threat, maybe the primary wind threat if the tornado threat is not as robust as the SPC thinks. Large area of potentially higher winds with any storms that develop. They'll be efficient at pulling that wind energy to the ground, and then hail with the freezing levels the way they are, certainly a higher risk for hail here in Illinois. So that's what the SPC is seeing. If we take a look at a couple of different models to just show you some of the discrepancy here, we'll start with our dew points. And I'm going to put this back. This is the NAM and its projection of dew points. So the 12Z NAM. And so look at this. You've got dew points coming in the mid 50s, really, as you get on into the afternoon hours. So after lunch into the early afternoon and the late afternoon, you're starting to see temperatures or dew point temperatures into the mid to maybe even some upper 50s here, according to the NAM in Illinois. That sweeps onto the east and infiltrates Indiana as we get on into the evening, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and then that pushes on off before midnight, and the threat wanes with nocturnal cooling. So that is the NAM's depiction of the dew points. The HRR is a little bit less generous with its dew points. It gets into the lower to maybe some mid 50s, sneaking into Illinois. The timing's about the same, and then Indiana. So we're seeing much more in the way of lower dew points with the HRR. It does finally bring a surge of higher dew points into Indiana, and it actually likes Indiana with some of its radar depictions through the evening better than the NAM does. But that's what it looks like. Now, looking at the NAM instability as we get on into the later afternoon, you can see really the green colors represent 1,000 or higher joules of CAPE, and that is lower level instability. So that's more than enough if that develops to get the job done to create a severe weather threat here. Yesterday, it didn't look like there was going to be very much instability at all, but things have changed over the last 24 hours, and that wanes as you get on into Indiana. But still, we're looking at 400 or 500 joules of surface-based CAPE. That definitely could be enough. The HRR's depiction here is similar, except let's see here. If you get on into Illinois, it cranks out the CAPE. Just not quite as robust though as the NAM, but it does eventually kind of get there, but a little bit farther east as it likes Indiana better with the higher dew points. And so it holds on to a little stronger instability a little later in the evening through Indiana. So it kind of maintains that signature of instability a little bit better than the NAM does. That's why we're seeing some, it's not a slam dunk forecast. There's some model discrepancy here. Some of it has to do with how long the sunshine's going to stay out. If you can get breaks in the clouds, heat up the atmosphere, that's certainly going to help. And then here's our upper level winds. The HRR doesn't show 500 millibar winds, but I'm showing you that. And you look here and you see that little jet streak nosing into southern Illinois later this afternoon. You're actually in the different quadrants of this create different motion in the atmosphere. When you're in the left front exit region, or the the right front quadrant, I'm saying it wrong, the right front quadrant and the left exit region. So this is the exit region up here. This is where air's exiting the jet. This is where air's entering the jet. So the right front entrance region, the left exit region, that's where we're looking at the highest amount of rising motion. So you would see, if you were looking at this and you were wondering where the air is likely to be rising the best, it would be right in this area and right in this area somewhere in here. And so those are the places where the air rises, and you've got lift that generates convection, potentially stronger thunderstorms. And so we're seeing that play out with the NAM. And so we'll put that on into motion, and well, let's roll that a little bit forward, and you can see that moves into southern Illinois, Indiana. So that's why just north of that jet in that left exit region, as it traverses the area, that's why this area here is under the gun for the most lift and coincident with the most instability and shear in the atmosphere. So that's what we're looking at there. And so that's a good depiction of that. Now, looking at the significant tornado parameter, any value over 1 gives you the potential for significant tornado parameter. So where do those values overlap with the other values that we just saw? And again, the NAM rolls this through. It's got significant tornado parameter all the way up and down this line, but this is displaced from the best shear and the best lift. That's why you can't just look at this number and say, oh, there's going to be tornadoes. If you see significant tornado parameters on a social media post, you have to understand what you're looking at. You want to see where this is located with the best instability and the best potential for lift in the atmosphere and the best shear. And so this takes into account the shear and its index, but it's still, you want to see these numbers overlap. And so you see a little bit of that overlapping up here, and that's why there's some concern. The HRR shows something similar as you get on in here. It shows the higher values up north. It moves those into Indiana. You get a value of 5 that's probably overdone, but still you get the point. There's plenty of shear available, and so both models see the potential for strong tornadoes if they do indeed develop. And then lastly, here's your radar imagery. So we're looking at the snow, heavy snow on the backside as we get on into this evening. Look, the NAM, this is the NAM, starts to break out some thunderstorms and some showers here. The red would indicate more in the way of thunderstorm activity. Nothing too major. You just see some broken areas of convection and see some individual cells. Some of those cells, certainly, they don't look all that impressive on this future radar prediction, but any of these could rotate, that are, especially those that are by themselves, they could rotate and drop a tornado for a time. And then that pushes off as we get to the later 9-10 o'clock and the threat is over. The HRR, on the other hand, let's see what it does. We'll move this through. So this is later this evening. We get into 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. It starts to develop a little bit more in the way of more robust convection. You can see those cells breaking out individually. Some of them have those little bean shapes to them. It's hard to see. We're not zoomed in very well, but you could see some signature of rotation here. So it's liking a line of storms going into Indiana 7, 8 o'clock, moving on 9, 10. So you've got a line of storms that would potentially have some wind threat. So it holds the severe threat through Indiana. So that would validate the slight risk. But again, the greatest overlapping of shear and instability is in this region here. And so this is where I would be on the lookout for any strong tornadoes and the highest tornado threat. So that's what we're looking at through the afternoon. All of that will wane as we get past 10, 11 o'clock. It pushes off into Ohio and we're done with the threat. Now, let's move on and talk about the long range briefly. We've been long in the tooth with this video, had a lot to cover. As we get past the storm, so this is Friday, you can see the European develops a little secondary area of low pressure. We saw that on our Friday surface map from earlier up here toward New England. Wraps a little bit of snow around on the backside where the cold air filters in, but no major storm system there. The next storm system I would look out for is somewhere in the 23rd through the 25th. We've got another system that works into the plains, spins up a little bit. You've got some chance of severe weather along this area Sunday, Monday in the deep south. That probably is not going to extend all the way to the east coast, but we'll see as it goes on. Some more snow up here in the Great Lakes. So both models, the GFS and the European, sort of agree that there's going to be a storm system there, although they kind of evolve it differently. So the 24th through the 25th is your next major time frame. A few other little light systems move along. And then the next system is the March the 29th, say through March 30th, we'll call it, through April the 2nd. The European has another pretty strong storm here, and it sends another line of showers and storms through the south and then moves off the coast. The GFS has a different trajectory, but still has a pretty significant storm there. So those are your two kind of time periods to watch over the next couple of weeks. Your upper air pattern, you can see this is before today. This is yesterday. So watch this. Watch where this trough is coming on. See where it's coming on? It's coming in here to essentially northern California. So watch this. And that it moves it into maybe central California, and it spins up that big low here in the plains. That's what we're seeing now. The next storm system comes in a little bit farther north, and then the next one comes in farther north from that. So we're seeing essentially the track of these storms come in a little farther north, and as they do that, they're not at the same trajectory. They're going to spin up some storms, but they might be a little farther to the north, and so we get kind of the leftovers down here in portions of the Midwest and down into the deep south. So we'll have to see how the jet stream plays out over time, but it looks like for a while anyway, we start to see those storm systems come on in a little farther to the north. That would be a little bit of a less strongly, it would tend to lend itself to storms that aren't as strong, which we could use a break from. And then we see a ridge set up out west and a trough the east. That's going to be temporary as that sort of gets beat down over time as we go out into mid or late March. And you see that ridge kind of traverse back over to the east again and a general trough out west. So if we see this sort of pattern, you're going to have storms come back into the central portion of the country again, depending on how strong this ridge is. They might ride over the top or they could swing east. So that's what we're looking at there. So our total footprint, heavy precipitation along the west coast, tracks across the northern tier. Sometimes they bomb out in the plains or get stronger in the plains and drag up moisture out of the Gulf again. This is the same sort of footprint we've been seeing for the last 2 weeks, so nothing new here. Our temperature profile, again, this is a 5-day average, so we're looking at March the 22nd through March the 27th. March the 23rd through March the 28th. This is the average. So you can see we get a little bit of a break over the 6 to 10 day period. We're going to look at a little cooler in the east, a little warmer in the west, and then over time that shifts, and you get a little cooler across the north, a little warmer across the south, but nothing major showing up in terms of anomalies. And looking at our CPC, 8 to 14 day, skewed warmer than normal southwest to northeast, cooler than normal. Precipitation, similar footprint. Look down in South Texas. Now it's starting to see a little bit more in the way of precipitation, maybe making it in here with a subtropical jet stream. You guys could use the rain there. Above normal on the west coast still, and above normal across this northern tier. And that, my friends, is our long-range outlook. And now we'll transition to our trivia answer. So what was our question today? I think it was about lightning. Yes, it was. What country holds the record for the most annual lightning strikes? Venezuela, the United States, India, or Australia? And the answer is Venezuela, particularly the Lake Maracaibo region. Make Maracaibo great again. Lake Maracaibo. The Lake Maracaibo region experiences frequent and intense lightning storms known as Catatumbo lightning due to a unique combination of topography, climate, and atmospheric conditions. Tongue-tied saying Lake Maracaibo, that creates sort of a constant cycle of convection and thunderstorm activity. So Lake Maracaibo is surrounded by mountains, including the Andes, and they tend to trap moist air, warm, moist air, and then force it upwards because of all the wind currents in the region. And it leads to the formation of thunderstorms. And so, for about 300 nights a year, you can observe lightning in that area. It's known as the lightning capital of the world. So, do not fly a kite at Lake Maracaibo. All right, so that is your trivia question. Now you know about lightning. Now you know about the weather. And pay attention if you're in Illinois and Indiana later today, and watch, have ways to get alerts, multiple ways to get alerts, and just stay weather aware, because as that sun breaks out, instability rises and you get showers and thunderstorms. Any of those storms could spin up a tornado, potentially a significant one. So be careful there. Subscribe to our channel. We'll keep you updated. Follow me on Twitter at Real Cold Rain. I also post on TikTok as well, but primarily here and Twitter. So anyway, I hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll see you again. And remember, if other channels run 24/7, we got you covered 48/14. So take it easy, everybody. Hope you have a great day. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.